An interesting little story about. I mean, I did aircraft for a long time, and then I wanted to do the flying boats and wanted to see my airplanes get further and more mass acceptance. So what I actually did was I offered. I already had Rolls-Royce Merlin Engine Company, and I had some of the fastest planes or something like that. And then at some point, I wanted to have. I wanted to have my airplanes going to more ports. So, and I wanted some inexpensive airplanes built. And so one of the things was I had wooden shipbuilding companies already, and people know I had barrel companies already, making barrels and bending wood and stuff. And so I asked I believe it was an Irish boat building company or something. I asked one of my companies to build a boat, basically a very very light, thin boat, thin wood, and 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 then I asked another team to go and build a wing on top of that thin thin boat, and so it was kind of like almost a standalone structure at first, and how this kind of happened, and then and then and then I asked, I believe, one of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine companies, one of my engine companies, to go and put a power plant on that boat. And so they did, or on the wing basically. They mounted between the wing and the boat, pretty much, or they did some sort of construction to figure that out. They drew it up and figured it out, and then so the fuselage was actually, they're kind of independent companies, but kind of the same, and it actually became very popular as things went on. But the boat, but the actual fuselage of the plane or the boat was basically being built by an old boat company. They had been building wooden boats forever. In fact, I believe the Woody boats were that company became the airplane boat fuselage building company. So they were building these wooden boats, fuselages that became fuselages for this aircraft, and they were building them rather thin. And the wings were, I believe, maybe made out of aluminum. Aluminum was a little more expensive back in that day, but it seemed to me like a good price combination because wood was cheap, aluminum was expensive, and it kind of seemed like the best of both worlds. The wing would be strong, made out of aluminum or made out of a tougher material than the boat fuselage itself, but they would both kind of support each other. So, so it's kind of like a fusion of ideas, and and so then. So these things would be, like 75% wood, but with aluminum wing, or at least like a more high tech wing and engine kind of combination. Anyway, and so when my company was going together to do that, what I then said was, because I needed to have docks for these craft, for these shipping, cargo aircraft and also passenger aircraft. I was having two of them built, at least two different types. One cargo, one passenger, and kind of with a little bit of cargo. So then I said, I offered it out there. I said 1/3 cargo rights or passenger rights. It's 1/3 of the plane basically would get dedicated to the port of call or wherever the dock was located. So if a city built a dock for one of my aircraft, they would be able to possibly fly. People would, anytime the plane flew out, it would be able to fly one of their 1/3 cargo rights, which translates also into 1/3 passenger. So basically, kind of people could go to an island and then fly out for free, basically one-way trip, and the ticket costs would basically just cover pretty much employee costs and also the design team costs. So it was kind of like. Actually, it's amazing it actually worked out, because I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. Because basically, it's free ride back or free cargo going one way. But then again, they only go to those spots basically when there's enough passengers, you can't. But I mean, paying two guys and some fuel, an empty plane is pretty cheap to fly, to a place. But then, I could lose money on the way out, basically, though. So, yeah, I mean, it was risky. I was like, well, but but that was just to get the initial docks built, and then after a while, I mean, we'd have to start charging, of course, when the companies got low on money. But the initial, of course, was if the town or city built a dock, basically they would be able to get. I think I offered it up there for like 1 year, basically, and then after a year, I was like, yeah, okay, time to cut it off. It basically covered the construction of the dock pretty much in that place. So it was one of my ideas. And it was a little bit of risk. I mean, I was thinking about it, I was like, I'm going to lose money here. But I mean, I had invented the plane, so technically I had plenty of money anyway. And Pan Am was my company, basically. So I thought of it as, I was going from the steamship industry into the airplane industry. And plus I was also, because wooden boats weren't going to be used anymore, I was really huge with boats for a while there. And then I was getting kind of like out of the boat market and going more into the airplane market because I wanted to see more airplanes. And airplanes were more efficient really than boats anyway, because a boat used a lot of fuel comparatively to an airplane. So I thought, a little bit of risk there, but I mean, I thought that for me and my companies that it would be fairly successful because most people like to fly and stuff, and I thought it'd be a good idea. So basically the idea was pretty much that they'd cover employee costs and basically save a little bit of money for me, and like 10% of whatever profit, basically idea kind of thing. And so, I thought, well, it's a little bit risky, but I mean, it doesn't cost that much to have an airplane built, and I already had these these boat building companies building wooden boats for me anyway. So I was looking at it as, well, these people are going to go out of business, so I'm just taking these companies and transferring them from a wooden boat fuselage thing into a more of an airplane fuselage thing. So the wooden boats are going to have to get a little bit thinner. Turns out I had really, really skilled people. And I believe I forget which company took it on. I think it was an Irish company took it on, and they started building these beautiful wooden fuselages, boat fuselages, and then they put the aluminum wings on top, and I think some of the wings were actually even wooden too. They also built some all wood variations because the wood turned out to be very strong, and a couple of the designers said, yeah, we can do a wooden wing that's just as strong as aluminum. I was like, okay, well, all right. And maybe even wrap it with aluminum or whatever. I was like, I mean, play around with it, and so they started to. And some of them, and some of the things were hugely successful, and I was really quite surprised with how much people really loved them. And there were quite a few variants, and some of them were my pride and joys. I was like, oh yeah, I love that one. That one's cool. But that's kind of like how that really got started, and why I was so accepted in so many cities like Hawaii, all these different places, where people were, all they had to do was build a dock. So they built the dock, and then, and people also went to these places because, they went there they paid to go there, but then on the way back, they got a free ride, which is why the initial going there was the actual cost of the ticket more than the coming back. Because they just assumed that you would be coming back, but not everyone came back. Some people stayed there, or some people actually took ships back. So there was a little bit of a profit difference there, and that actually kind of worked out to basically be put into bigger and more awesome aircraft. And one of my boat building, I believe it was the Woody, the boat building company that built the Woodies, because then they started building ultra thin wooden boats because they realized that they could make boats really strong that were really thin, that would go really fast, and that kind of how it, they were building airplane fuselages, and they got better at building because they had to build thinner boats. So then they built thinner fuselages. So then they transferred that back into the boat market. And then the boats got a lot faster because the boats were a lot thinner and stuff. And they got a lot better at bending thin wood. And plus the glues were getting better, so because they had to make waterproof glues for the airplanes that were also light. So that's kind of how that technology just kind of did its thing. And kind of interesting there. So, and how that whole boat plane market, and I already owned the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine company, so I already had really good engines, and then they built other better engines that were a little bit better balanced, that were a little bit smaller. Howard Hughes did all that. So that's kind of how that portion, how like, and plus I had the 2 engine cargo plane later on that was all aluminum. That I thought, well, why not just put a third engine in the front of it? You know, that 3 engine kind of square aircraft that you see in history that flew around, that the RAF used a lot. Like I said, I had a whole history of my people building wooden aircraft, which was hugely successful, and I was like, oh, that's cool, awesome, and they did all kinds of stuff, and they had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really glad. I was just like, you guys are crazy. Okay. I can't believe that so much history went by. Like, it's kind of hard for me to even think about that really that many years that their airplanes were that loved and that cared about, but they did, and the world really changed. I don't know how so much time had passed, really. To me, I mean, it seems like just like 30 years ago to me, because when I first invented it and thought of it and was kind of like managing and overseeing the companies and everything. So it's kind of like a weird kind of thing. It was like, For me, it's only been 30 years. But the history and everyone else seems to think it's been hundreds of years. So it's like, that's not really possible. But okay. Yeah, anyway, though. But I don't know. I mean, I was only 5 or 6 years old when I made those decisions. So